As a design and communication company doing events, exhibitions and other work, at least now we've understood our carbon footprint, talked to our staff about the need to think through the climate impact of the solutions we put to clients. So we're not making a great big song and dance about it because we think there's no need to do that if we just know as a team we're starting to think through, have a dialogue with our clients about reducing the climate impact of the work we do. And yeah, I think that's having a quite positive benefit both for our staff and for the clients.
Find out what their emissions are, understand those emissions, get those quantified, work out which parts of the business are their high emission sections, and then seek to ways that they can manage that. There's issues about energy efficiency. There's also ways about just simply changing people's behaviour within their business. It becomes a very good way to reduce cost across the business. There's great benefits of actually going down this path for business because it can in fact reduce their cost base.
What we use, being very careful now, because you go to get something printed and you make sure it's on Enviro paper and it costs a little bit more in dollars, but I think in the future you'll find that the savings will be great. And they're the things, you just look at what you use. And we moved to Sydney and part of the deal was my wife catches a train to work, and that was we look for a place near a station. So little things like that, they make a difference.
Well, I think just by beginning to think about it, and then really I think it needs to be sort of looked at from the ground up. Like in our organisation, we've got commitment from all our staff and they're already racing around implementing a lot of things. And I think what we're trying to do now is sort of pull it into something that we understand and can measure.
Engaging people that do understand the system to the extent that the system exists, and also then working with whoever it is that they choose to work with in a positive fashion so that they maximise the time that they have, a time window that's actually shrinking, to educate.
I think that it's important for the people that come to events and hear about things to keep talking to people in the tea room, in their outlets that they have through their print media and through their conversations in the groups that they can then influence. It's too easy to do it all from up at the top table, and I think people are keen, but at this stage, what do I do is the big question. So I think it's about education, I think it's about resourcing people to empower people to make decisions to work with you.
Well, first thing is they really need to understand where they are today in terms of their overall corporate social responsibility, and in this particular instance in their climate change. What is their footprint? What do they need to do to then reduce their footprint or be more socially responsible overall? The bigger issue is how does that permeate down through to the person, the blue-collar worker sitting out in the depot way from the boardroom. What is in it for them? Why should they do something that's different to the way they've always done something? And how is it meaningful to them to actually change the way they do what they do so that it actually is to the benefit of them as well as to the benefit of the organisation as a whole and ultimately society as a whole?
Obviously, they've sort of got to start to look inwards and measure the impact that their organisations are making on climate. And then from an employee and employer value proposition, start to assess what it is that their employees and the market expects from them. So I guess if you can get a line between, where are we today, what is the impact we're making, and what is going to make a difference to our organisation to be competitively advantaged, then you might get a line of sight of what are the key things to address. So it's interesting. I mean, today, one element of what's being talked about today is the economic element, of course, and the ability to make money. But it's also, the biggest issue that faces organisations today is how to get the best talent. So the other, maybe third component to think about is how do we make the biggest impact on our organisation from a people perspective, and make people want to stay and work for our organisation and make people want to come and join our organisation because of the impact we're making. I think companies like GE are very much playing on that from an employer value proposition perspective, and so is ANZ. And these are healthy things for them in terms of, getting the best talent in the market to come and join their organisation, which only in turn helps them build bigger organisations, better organisations and get more profit.
I think they should be looking at every aspect of their business and their logistics pipeline and their relationships with other organisations and begin to question, query every aspect of their business.
Both businesses and households should, at the moment, reduce their usage, reduce as much energy usage as possible, reduce as much water usage as possible. Very basic things in our companies, one pushing solar hot water. If you install a solar hot water system, you reduce household or business energy usage by up to 30%. So companies with large water usage like car companies, Toyota, car washers, try and use as much, that use hot water, try and use as much solar as possible and use less water, recycle water.
It needs to be a very holistic process. You need to be able to look at every aspect of your organization, because there's a physical side, obviously, buildings and the furniture that goes within them, and that's what we do. We actually design furniture. You need to make sure that those physical properties have been designed and the whole concept behind them has been with sustainability in mind, because you don't want to have to worry as a leader of an organization that the products that you've put into an actual space are going to have a damaging impact on the environment later. So you really need to hold your suppliers accountable that they have thought about sustainability and built that into their own properties. But on the actual, if you want to call it the more organizational side or the organizational culture, the leader of an organization really needs to demonstrate that they have a passion and a commitment to sustainability, because it really needs to start from the top. They need to be able to see that the leader themselves embraces sustainability and that it's built into the culture of the organization.
I think they need to understand the inputs and outputs of their business and where they derive their product or services and the impact of their own services back on the environment. So I think they need to look at measuring that. I think they need to understand the impact of that and be ready for cost changes, legal restrictions, be prepared to innovate and be prepared for change.
Well, to the extent that they're obligated already, they have to be aware that there's things they have to do already today. They have to get across that regulation and understand it. And they've also got to be fairly open-minded. Don't just see this as a threat. I mean, it's a much bigger picture thing. Sure, there are issues and threats about climate change, but there's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of positive things that can be done which will actually increase the value of their business.
There's a lot of things businesses can be doing. They can be measuring their carbon footprint, and they can be working out the cost of abatement, reducing their emissions profile. So once we do have a market and a market price, they can work out whether they're better placed to pursue that abatement or buy permits or credits from the market.
There's a lot that can be done, as I say, that would have positive effect on their bottom line. So the first thing would be to look at their own efficiencies, become more efficient in their use of energy, and then at the same time be looking at how the pricing of carbon is going to affect the future price once the sustainability aspects are internalised in the cost of the inputs to their business.
I think it's very important that they do look at what they can do in this area based on what are the likely outcomes of this legislation. Immediately, if they don't understand their footprint, they don't understand the environmental impact that their footprint is having on the environment, that should be something that should be done straight away. What I found is this is a much more time-consuming process than what we ever envisaged at ANZ, and it's something that's really important to be on top of. And from a corporate social responsibility perspective, what can you do now to make a real impact on your own footprint? So that's what I'd be recommending.